Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making your way here, for checking out the series. Hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with all the episodes. I put out 3 brand new ones every single week, doing every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So it's a great way to keep up with your favorite artists, discover those new ones. You can grab us at Spotify, Apple Podcast, NPR, WFPK.org, Consequence, or of course, right here on YouTube for the video versions. Anywhere you get your podcast from, you can subscribe to Kyle Meredith with. And that's me, Kyle Meredith, today talking with Prentice Penny about the new Hulu docuseries, Black Twitter, A People's History. Now, Prentice, you'll know he was the showrunner from Insecure on HBO. He's also the writer, director, and producer behind Uncorked, among many other things he's done. But we're going to be talking about this new docuseries. I want to ask him why he wanted to tell this the story of Black Twitter, really the social movements and the people that inspired these movements and the community that found each other all on the social media site before it got bought up by Elon Musk. Of course, we're going to hear about how the narrative didn't exactly change, but it advanced, I guess, after Elon did buy it, and what that really means for the future of a community. Where folks are gathering, where their voices are still being heard, and maybe even what it all means in an election year. You get all that and more. We're talking Black Twitter, A People's History. It's Kyle Meredith with Prentice Penny. Yeah. We were
Love your
talking about
wall.
the backgrounds. We got
Yeah,
these
I love
very
your
sweet
walls.
background you've got there.
Yeah, my grandmother was a Sinatra fan, so I became a Sinatra fan. So I'm a big Rat Pack, so it's all wallpaper
Yeah.
of them. But I love your background too. That's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, how do you feel about the news with Leo and Sinatra?
I'm curious about that. I saw that thing about Scorsese, Jennifer Garner, maybe. I was like, that's interesting. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I'm again reserving judgment. It could be great. I'm feeling the same thing about Chalamet right now with Dylan, because I'm like Dylan, very big Dylan fan, and nothing against Timothy Chalamet, but it's like okay, I'll reserve judgment. Maybe it's going to be great.
Who would you, in your mind, who would you say would have been the right person?
I don't even know. The thing is with Dylan, like there have been some good Dylan movies that he has helped
Mhm.
produce. I'm
Mhm.
not there where he had like 6 different people playing him,
Right.
throughout the eras. I thought that was really, I mean, he's such a weird little enigma, as a cult figure,
Yeah.
that it almost is like you have to do something like that to get to the base of it. But if they're concentrating on this one little moment in his life, then sure, why not? Like I'm again not against him. It's
Right.
just I can't see it, I can't hear it yet.
Right. Yeah. No, I get
So
it.
yeah, and Leo's the same way. It's like talking about Leo and Sinatra is like I don't know that I would have ever considered Leo as Sinatra.
I get it though. Because when I think about Sinatra, I think about like what person as an actor, if you were to say, like, has captivated the world at various points, I would say Sinatra's that guy. And Leo, I mean, we can certainly talk about like the girls of it all, right? Like there's certainly like that kind of level for Leo that I'd go like, I don't know if there's not a better role for him to step in to be the coolest ladies man out there. It's pretty much like, hey man.
Well, that's on that side. So that means they're probably gonna cast the rest of the Rat Pack. I mean, maybe, right? Like you
Yeah,
think?
unless it's like, I mean, I'm sure they'll probably have some role, but it doesn't sound like it's really about them. So it sounds like it might be more of the Sinatra time. I mean, I'm sure there'll be actors who will be playing those guys, but it seems like it's not really about that. I'd be curious to see like what is it about too? Is it a whole length of time? Is it a specific moment?
Right.
What are we talking about? Because obviously there's skinny Frank, and then there's more mature Frank. So I'm like, Leo's not playing skinny Frank. That's Timothy Chalamet.
That's Timothy Chalamet. He's gonna do them all.
He's gonna do everything, man.
I'm gonna get to the main point at hand here with Black Twitter,
Sure.
but I've got to. But so Sinatra, like I love Sinatra. I don't know no Sinatra. I know a lot, so I'm gonna ask this without knowing if I've got the answer myself. But you know, if you've got a, what do you have the go-to album? Do you rank it like that?
I don't rank it like that. I love certain songs that Frank has. Like my favorite Sinatra song is I Got the World on a String. That's like one of my favorite Sinatra songs like ever. I mean, obviously there's the big ones like My Way and all that type of stuff, but I Got the World on a String is like one of my favorite. It's like I can listen to that all the time.
Yeah. What's the divorce album? The Quiet Morning Lonely Hour.
Oh,
I've just blanked on it. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, my grandmother used to love the early. I didn't realize as a kid when I'd watch like those Bugs Bunny cartoons
Mhm.
that was like Frank Sinatra. I was like, why is this skinny guy? Who's this skinny guy? Women are like fainting over. And then my grandma was like, oh, that's Frank. That's kind of how it started. Was she was a Sinatra fan, and in the cartoon, I'd be like, who is this? Whatever. And she was like, oh, that's supposed to be Frank Sinatra. I was like, who's Frank Sinatra? And then obviously, there we go.
Looney Tunes taught me a lot in the same
Looney
way.
Tunes, man.
I was just yesterday wondering how old Buster Bunny, what because you have dumb thoughts
Yeah.
in your day, like, and I thought, how old is Buster Bunny in real age now? And I did
Oh,
not
bad.
answer that, so it's
Yeah. No, there's no way to know.
no way to know. Anyway, let me ask you about Black Twitter on Hulu, this fantastic documentary. Like I knew about Black Twitter. It never would occur to me in the same way. It's like the way you all have painted this contextualized so much about the last decade, things that we all know, things that we've all experienced, but finally putting it in this frame, I don't mind saying it blew my mind several times over throughout
Oh,
the three
thank you.
episodes.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you know, I started me, so it's in there in the title, it's suggested anyway, but my first thought was the book, The People's History of the United States, and how that retold our history through the lens of so many different minorities throughout. Like, here's the
Yeah.
history not told through guys that look like this right here, you know.
Right.
And reading that and how eye-opening it was, as eye-opening as reading that when I was younger was. I know this is the easy place to start, but how did this arrive? Why did you want to tell the story in this way?
So I mean, I was active on Twitter and obviously other social media, but certainly active on Black Twitter for a long time. And one of the things I find interesting, as you're talking about the history of the United States, I'm old enough now where I remember the first election that I remember as a kid was Reagan Carter. And I remember my mom being so irate about Reagan coming into power and Carter being gone. And I've had enough life now where I've seen every president be a reaction to the previous president, right? Which is like, oh, you see how Clinton's a reaction to Bush and Reagan. You see how Bush is a reaction to Clinton. You see how Obama's a reaction to Bush. You certainly see how Trump is a reaction to that, right? And for me, I've learned that like America is a big cause effect. And we kind of repeat these things, right, on these pendulums. And so when I was looking for something to do post Insecure, I really wanted something that would scare me again in a way that kind of scared me and being creative again. And I wanted to do something that would kind of separate whatever I did before that. And I kind of wanted a line of demarcation from the things I was going to do now at Onyx, from what I had done previously. And I knew whatever I did, if I did a scripted show right after this, it'll be immediately compared. I started thinking about the way people think about albums. Like, okay, well, how do I got to do this album slightly differently than what they expect of me to do next, right? And so I thought about people like Spike Lee, who had obviously done a ton of movies, but had started to do like When the Levees Break and obviously like Four Little Girls, and kind of veering into things that felt in the doc space. And for me, when this article came out, it just reminded me of everything that I had felt about the country. It reminded me of everything I remembered about Black Twitter. And it felt like this was a subject matter that I could participate in. It didn't feel like a foreign thing I had to like. It's about a Himalayan monk that I got to now get into Himalayan monks. It was like, oh, this is the thing I organically participate in, but doing it in a doc space is the thing that feels new. So that's really what drew me into it. It felt exciting. It felt right now. And one of the reasons that I think also too, that, Jason wrote the article because he felt like so many things on the internet are here today and gone tomorrow. And as a result, obviously like Friendster and Vine, we talk about that in the doc, but we had no idea when we were making this doc that Elon was going to buy the platform. And so to have the doc be exactly why Jason wrote the article, because I mean, for all intents and purposes, Twitter is gone. right? And the literally like the platform could be gone whenever, if he decided to ever turn it off, he could do that, and there would be no record of what we contributed culturally and politically and in the tech space to the world. And so it felt, now it feels so prophetic, but at the time it just felt like, yeah, it feels like the right amount of distance to do it. But now it's like, oh man, this is crazy.
Yeah, the timing, unfortunately, as you're saying, one of the things I took away, I was thinking about right at the end of it too, was that so often I will say when people, my wife or anybody is like, that the internet is just weighing down on them, that, the stuff they're reading and all that. And I was like, it's not real. None of that is real. None of those people are real. None of the things that, it's just like, but this doc, I'm going the exact opposite way because of what you're saying. Like, the things happen, the narratives happen, the reflection of America happen because
Yeah.
of these very real people getting together in an online community. And that's sort of, I mean, I hope it doesn't sound like a hyperbole, because I think you guys come close to maybe almost saying it. Like, Twitter in the last decade might be the most important revelation, in our culture. Is that
I
accurate?
I think it's super accurate. And I think the one of the reasons why it's super accurate, we get into this in the doc too, is like, so much of, you know, driving culture in this country is predicated on either access and resource, right? And then deciding whether or not I choose to listen, right? So for example, like you can't go talk to a president back in the day if you weren't a big donor. There was just no way some guy from Connecticut or Kentucky or wherever could just go sit and talk to the president, right? And certainly no way that they would talk back. He's just like so disconnected, right? And also there are so many ways in which like minorities and cultures of color might have their own publications, right? Like Essence and Ebony and Jet and several others in other communities. But if you're like a white dude from like Chicago, and you're just like, I don't want to read Essence magazine, then you don't have to participate in many conversations, right? But what Twitter allowed is like it's taking money out of the equation, and you're kind of forced to hear a conversation you may be able to isolate yourself from in your real world, but in this digital space, you kind of can't really run from it because it's going to dominate the conversation on the platform. So there is this sort of level of a democratization that happened on the platform because neither finances nor isolating yourself is a possibility. And I think that's why it was so impactful, because it took money out of the equation, and it took, I don't want to hear it out of the equation. You kind of had no choice but to hear it.
Yeah. I can't remember. Maybe I think the very first time I even heard the term Black Twitter,
Uh,
because the other side of my professional life, I help run a public radio station here in Louisville, and as
mhm.
we're public radio, we get away with all the different. We play a lot of Erykah Badu, next to Pearl Jam,
Yep.
or whatever. And I was talking once on Twitter, and I think I mentioned something about Erykah and Peebo Bryson. And one of my coworkers said, I thought Peebo Bryson only existed on Black Twitter here. And it was like, and I knew exactly, like, that moment is like, I understand exactly what you mean.
Yep. Shout out the people of Bryson. That's awesome.
Yeah, but it was kind of learning that, and as you're saying, suddenly that realizing those conversations that I can see,
Mhm.
I might not be BET's prime target, but suddenly here it
Mhm.
is right here in the
Yeah.
conversation. And now knowing, as you're saying, what it's become, I even love in the documentaries, like, I'm only going to call it Twitter. We're not getting in the same way, by the way.
I think if
But
we called it Black X, it might isolate some more people anyway.
but it's like what it meant to journalism,
Yeah.
and how we put our trust in these places. Like, that's also the thing. Like, what's your take on that? Because I think about when people can start really complaining about Facebook and the misinformation,
Yeah.
and Twitter is the same way. It gave this online community, gave a place, as you're saying, but at the same time, we put our trust in these places
Yeah.
almost like we have ownership, and it can just go away.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was the thing that, like anything in like anything in life, right? Somebody tells you this is what it is, you believe it at kind of face value, right? Like, because you're like, well, there are people smarter than me that clearly can put this together. So they must have this already figured out. And they just didn't, right? And there's ways in which they were, when people are your commodity and that's the way you're making money, you're incentivized to keep more people around, right? That's just, why would you get rid of the way that you're making money, right? In essence, right? And so I think like anything, right? There's a system and then you learn how to hack the system. You go, oh, what are the loopholes of the system, right? We see people do that with taxes. We see people do it in, like people do it at the grocery store. I get this coupon, get that. I can sort of hack the system, right? And I think the way that we were all sort of having this conversation and these things that were happening is there were ways in which you could hack that information. There was ways you could manipulate that information. There was ways you could say, oh, I'm a part of this community, only to be told that later, like that was a bot, right? But if you're not aware that those things people are even playing, and that's what I think the people realize. There are people playing at this level, and then there were people playing at a higher level who understood, like, really the way Black Twitter was driving cultural conversation in the country, and they didn't like where that was going, and they put things in place to mess with that. And I think that's what you saw it. And certainly Black people in this country are often told, your voice doesn't matter, your vote doesn't matter, your influence is really just here in the States, not overseas. And actually what we saw was quite the opposite, right? Is that, other countries and other superpowers were threatened by that and threatened by where this is going. Certainly seeing Obama become president is certainly, and Hillary being the next one up, is certainly a move to other countries that if they don't like people of color and women are starting to be the people in charge of America, I don't like that. We need to get involved in that. And so I just think, like anything, you start to hack the system of a thing that up until that point, you were seeing the fruits of, right? You're seeing the fruits of organization and protest and change, and you're seeing the fruits of that. But I think, and so you believe, like anything, it will continue. Oh, the fruits will, just like in the housing market. Oh, the houses will keep going up and up and up and up. It'll never bubble. It'll never burst, right? It's like the assumption that things will continue. That's like, I forget the thing. It's like when people gamble, it's like the assumption that good luck happens, that the good luck will continue to occur. It's like, that's not how it actually works, but that's how our psychology wants to believe. And I think that's what we were seeing in the country at that time, was our psychology wanting to believe that that progress is a straight line. And as we often know, it's not a straight line, right? It has lots of twists and turns to it. And I think we were in a straight line for a long time and didn't see the twists and turns that could start to come.
Yeah, I try to keep an optimistic view when it comes to that right there too, because talking about like culture and politics and news weighing down on you, it's the reminder that progress, it's called progress. It means it continues. And it's not always fast, and sometimes it's slow, and sometimes but in the history of our civilization, eventually it has always won.
Mm-hmm.
And we have these pendulum swing moments of resistance that we seem to be in, especially in this last, 5-10 years or more, or forever. I don't know, but it's a tricky way of saying that. But like I still do have that optimism, because just if Black Twitter and this community doesn't exist in this spot, like people will find people.
Yeah,
right?
I think people, I think our community always finds, like minds always find like minds, right? In essence, right? And I think our community, I think specifically because we were brought here and immediately separated from each other, husband and wife, like mother to child, that we always try to find a way to reconnect roots and reconnect to community. I think that Black Twitter was just the way it existed at that time. It existed, I think, in the birth of hip hop at a certain point of like, oh, this is like a serious, like-minded group of people. I think it existed digitally over here. And I like to think that like Black Twitter sort of left the matrix in a lot of ways. Like I like to think that Black Twitter is an energy in the world now that's just like an energy of accountability, an energy of like, we're not taking the shit we used to take. Like I just think that is bigger than it being on a platform anymore. I equate, like, if you came up in the age of Black Twitter, the idea that you can't voice your opinion when you see something wrong is crazy. Whereas my grandparents might have seeing a Karen might have a different, well, let's just leave her alone. Let's not blah, blah, blah. Whereas today it's like, no, I'm gonna film you because you're crazy. And I'm gonna figure out who you are and you might lose your job. Like that, those levels of like growing up in a time when you feel protected in a community, right, brings a different energy to your adulthood, which then you raise your children with a different energy, right? Then just be quiet, just assimilate, just get along, because that's what you had to do to survive then, right? And I think we're talking about the difference between surviving, right, and thriving and living, right? And those come with two different point of views and two different attitudes. And I think you're seeing a post-Black Twitter energy, which is about how do we thrive and not just survive, but how do we thrive and live and engage and embrace our own power and our own strength, you know, without it feeling I have to shrink as a result of that.
Right. I'm only picking up on one thing you said back there, and I'm picking up on the most trivial thing, because there are these great fun moments of this series too. We're talking about a lot of big subjects. The fact that you had the Mount Rushmore of Karens.
That was fun. That was fun to do the Mount Rush. It was a lot of debate on who goes up there. There was but I feel like those were the perfect people to put up there.
Those are pretty great. But you put together like the all-stars of some of the greatest, you know, Twitter moments of all time, of hashtag moments of all time. You know, maybe it's just reaching out to these people, but you know, and you put them together at this table, and they all get, and like, I don't know if there's anything to say that we didn't see on the screen, but I would love to hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, those moments were great because they didn't know who was going to be at that table. Because again, like part of the Black Twitter world is like obviously there's the people you know, which are the people that we were talking to in the article, which are like, I'm a professor of here, I was a part of this, and obviously there's you know, people that were you know, people who worked at Twitter obviously are in that too. But also was like Black Twitter is also made of like just random people wherever, right? And it's like, you know, like people who weren't trying to be, you know, famous or weren't trying to be, we're just like, I'm gonna just tweet, you know, Oscars are so white, or I'm gonna just tweet, I believe Black girls are magic, not knowing that that was gonna be a hashtag, or you know, Squint Bay, who now is a meme, was like she was just rubbing her knees because she was taking a picture, and then now she's a popular meme that people use all the time, and she'll never not be, right? And so for me, it was important to have those people also be a part of the doc because they were in it, like whereas obviously our people, our interview subjects, you know, some of them are in it, but some of them are commenting on what was happening. I wanted to also have people who were in the middle of it as it was happening in real time for them. And that was just as important because that's who makes up Black Twitter too, right? And so to have the person there that's just tweeted Black girls are magic, and like now to have them reaction to that was just great. Like those moments were just incredible. But we had a lot of moments we couldn't put in. Like we had like when Queen Elizabeth passed away and sort of watching, there was a one thing we had about Black Twitter and Irish Twitter teaming up. On those. So it was like little moments like that, like, oh, we couldn't like finagle those moments in because they were kind of like outliers. But no, we had a bunch of cutting room floor stuff that was like great.
It's a fourth episode. That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's all it takes is a fourth episode. That's but of course, you know, here we are here in that third episode. You know, we arrive in the present, and what does that mean for this election? Like, what does that mean for what it's meant in the past and how we move forward? Like, do you have that sense?
I'm curious of like if people seeing this doc in this election cycle specifically, right? Because there is a sort of history could repeat itself, right? And people, you know, obviously there's a lot of stuff that we get into in the second episode about Trump and, you know, Trump being a reaction to Obama and Black Twitter in a lot of ways and the energy around that. But I have no idea where this is going. I'm so it's so bizarre to turn on your TV and see the former president involved in another hush money scandal and to be like, well, that could be the guy, I guess. I have no clue. I guess presidents just can have hush money cases now. That's what's up. So it's just interesting to like see it all play out again, having made the doc to go, I really don't know which direction it's going to go. I really cannot tell. I can't tell people are like, we're not going for that again, or we might. Right. I just, Americans are interesting people. So but it's interesting watching, having done the doc. It's almost like, you know, when somebody trips and falls and they kind of fall in slow motion, like they kind of stumble and then they grab something and you're like, oh, they're gonna make it. No, then they start to, and you like, I can't help them, and I'm too far to kind of help. So they're kind of falling in slow motion. That's kind of what this election cycle feels like, having made the doc. It's like you're sort of watching America start to fall in slow motion, and you're like, I don't know how to help this.
As long as those voices are heard in the same
Yes.
way,
Yeah.
that's the most important thing.
That is the most important thing. I agree.
And I really do. I so appreciate this documentary that you all have made. I learned so much from it, and it's funny and it's entertaining at the same time. And I know that's hard to do. Congratulations on this. I seriously mean that. And thanks you so much for taking the time to talk about it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And we'll talk again when the Sinatra thing's out.
Yeah, exactly.
And thanks to my guest. Also, thanks to you for checking out the episode in the series. Before you get out of here, hit that subscribe button. Again, you get 3 brand new interviews every single week. New one every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at right here on YouTube, or of course anywhere in podcast land, including iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, NPR, or WFPK.org as well. A great way to keep up with your favorite artists and discover new ones as well. Then after that, actually head over to WFPK.org. That's where I do a show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's an hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, bonus interviews, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. Consequence has your music and film news. You can also find me on the social media spots, Facebook, Instagram, mostly on Twitter. All 3 of them, the address is at Kyle Meredith. Do hope you like and follow along. That does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.